This is the Physical Activity Researcher Podcast, a podcast for researchers of sedentary behavior, physical activity, and sports. Join for a relaxed dialogue about research design, practicalities, and, well, anything related to research. Learn from your fellow researchers useful and relevant information that does not fit into formal content and limited space of scientific publications. And here is your host, researcher and entrepreneur, Olli Tikkanen.
Welcome, everyone. Before introducing guest of today's episode, I would like to note just a few things. Physical Activity Researcher Podcast is committed to promoting equality and diversity in all its activities, including selection of guests. We have limited resources to scout all great researchers from different groups of people, so if you know someone who should be as a guest in the podcast, please ask this individual to contact us directly. As another thing, I would like to ask for your help. Being able to deliver this podcast to you, my audience, is based on how many people find, start to listen, and follow this podcast. So I would really appreciate little help promoting this podcast. You can do this by subscribing, following the podcast on Twitter, retweeting tweets sometimes, and maybe even giving a good rating if you liked an episode. And now it is time for the actual show. We have a great guest for today's episode. She is a clinical biomechanist and accredited exercise physiologist. She is working as a senior researcher at National Aging Research Institute. Previously, she has worked as an associate professor of clinical exercise and rehabilitation at Victoria University. She has expertise in the area of quantitative gait analysis and clinical biomechanics. Past 3 years, she has focused on outdoor exercise with equipment and how the built environment can impact on physical activity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, Dr. Pazit Levinger. Welcome, Pazit.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, so thank you for taking the time for this podcast. And I assume you are working from home. How is it going?
Yeah, it's not too bad. We've got a nice setup for myself and my husband to be working at home. The kids are doing remote learning, so they're close by as well. Even our dog has adapted quite well. He's snoozing in between. Yeah.
Yeah. And so would you like to tell more about your academic background, how you started with biomechanics and have moved probably to more translational research at the moment?
Of course. So have been doing research for the past probably over 12, 13 years. So I've started my PhD in the area of gait analysis and knee injuries, then moved into more osteoarthritis research, and then looking into falls and falls preventions and exercise and then physical activity. So I have shifted a bit more towards the focus of aging and physical activity. So from being an academic, I then left the university and moved into a research institute that heavily focused on aging and research around falls prevention, dementia, mental well-being, and so on. And then heavily focus on research translation, working with the community. So we're doing a lot of, randomized trial and clinical trials and so on. But it's really, really important that we also do research in the community. So we actually translated what we've done with the academia into practice. So that has been quite important in my transition to work with more community and hands-on. And it has been quite rewarding. So the last 3 years, we've been focusing on providing or running some exercise program for all the people in the community and collected some data around their well-being, their physical health, and how the outdoor impact on the physical activity participation.
So if we start with your more biomechanical studies with the knee injuries and osteoarthritis, could you tell what kind of studies you were doing and what were the main findings?
We looked initially at people with pain, knee pain or knee condition, if there's any impact on the biomechanics in terms of joint movement and joint moments. We also looked at the impact of foot and foot function, how it's impacting up the kinetic chain. And then with osteoarthritis, I've looked at gait before and after knee replacement surgeries, and seeing if people walking differently after that, if there's reduction in the load that apply to the joint, the knee joint.
This podcast is sponsored by Fibion, a research device that has been shown to be valid in tracking sitting, standing, physical activity and energy expenditure. Furthermore, Fibion has been shown to be valid categorizing physical activity into light, moderate and vigorous intensity. In addition to scientific accuracy, Fibion provides automatically produced and easy-to-understand reports for research participants. Get scientific validation and learn more about Fibion at fibion.com/research.
I guess the biomechanics with the patient groups and elderly, it provides you a good knowledge base for these translational studies and translational actions where you actually look at the outdoor equipment, or how do you see it?
Yeah, that's right. So with all my research, there was always work with humans, so obviously participants. And probably I would say 80%, 90% of my research is with all the participants, and I really enjoyed a lovely age group to work with, very wise. So that's why I actually enjoy doing a bit more hands-on research or doing interventions. So I actually get the chance to work with people. Yeah.
Mm. And so could you tell more about you looking the outdoor exercise equipment and their use, and it's quite relevant at the time in the world, so could you tell more about those?
Yeah, that's right. So the pattern started where, if you look outdoor, you see that there are not many opportunities for older people to engage in physical activity, primarily because, a lot of local government invest into equipment that it's primarily for kids, like playground. So there was a wonderful when we look at that a few years ago, exercise equipment that is actually produced in Finland and owned by labset. Um, that we look at the equipment, and the equipment seems to be designed specifically for older people. So it had some nice element that focus on strengthening coordination, balance, movement and mobility. So we thought we probably would be good to test and see if we actually design an exercise program with the equipment, if you're able to see some improvement. So then we ran the first randomized trial using the senior exercise park, and the results were quite promising. So then the passion expanded to look at, okay, we've done that study in kind of like controlled environment, but it could certainly provide great opportunities in the community, because similar to playground, if you actually invest into installing equipment that it's safe for all the people to use, and primarily targeting that demographic, then it could be a wonderful free of charge and a great way to get them engaged and become more physically active. So this is where things have evolved to, from a small study to then going into a bit more bigger sample and looking at more engagement with the community and local governments to where we are at the moment.
Mm. And you mentioned that this device, they brought quite nice improvements. So could you tell what kind of improvements you found, and how was the training period in the study, and how did you measure the improvements?
So with the original randomized trial that we did 4 years ago, we were looking at 18 weeks of exercise intervention twice a week. The equipment itself has various stations that target balance, strength, mobility, and function. So we designed the program that we're able to use the equipment as a tool to improve those physical function. And we've run, a baseline set of various physical measures that we looked at. That targeting, looking at strength, lowering strength, and balance. And then we also looked at some health related quality of life, and then compare it after the 18 weeks. And we did find physical function improvement, which was really, really good. With the current study that we have at the moment, we also run similar exercise program with the equipment for 3 months. We have, again, battery of tests that we measure, from mental well-being, physical function, physical activity level, depression, socialization and loneliness. So a lot of various outcome measures that we want that help us to get a bit of sense of not just the physical well-being, but also the mental and social well-being of the participants. And we do before and after, so we get the chance to see any improvement.
Mm. And you mentioned that these are special devices from a company called Labset. Do you think these devices are actually better, or were the improvements due to just doing something? How do you see that?
The advantage of the senior exercise park, because it's an outdoor exercise equipment, there's very other benefits that people, not just for the physical gain, but also for the mental well-being, because you are going outside and exercising outside, and we know it's good for you. So there's a lot of other things that come into play that help to promote that wellness. I don't think that should replace or is better than, but because it targets various domain within the physical functions, such as flexibility and range of motion and coordination and strength and balance, it's unique in that sense. Not many equipment actually targeting balance. A lot of the equipment out there is primarily for strengthening. So the combination of that holistic approach is quite unique, but also, unlike other mode of exercise, if you like, the equipment has sessions that help us to design or run exercise that is very functional. So the movement that we're using are very functional and very relevant for all the people. So unlike sitting in, for example, if you go to a gym and you sit inside a leg press or other machine that it's quite confined, here we're doing activities that it's pretty much what all the people or what people need to do on a daily basis. It's sit to stand, it's to reach up, it's to be able to walk well. So you're targeting all these functional elements that it's quite important for all the people. The other important aspect that we found quite encouraging is that people that actually come and exercise enjoy the socialization, because we run the program in group setting, and enjoyment is probably one of the key aspects that we have definitely observed from our participants. So if you enjoy what you do, if you enjoy the company, you're more likely to adhere to that and continue physical activity participation. So by doing that, we're actually targeting a lot of aspects that are likely to encourage all the people to be more active. It's enjoyment, socialization, and doing activities that are actually relevant for what they need to function better at home. So the combination of those aspects for us would feel like quite important if we want to look at, long term, how we can make people maintaining their physical participation, not just doing few things and then finish and not continue.
Yeah, and you said that the differing aspect is that there's also balance training. Could you tell more? How is it done, and how the safety has been secured?
So the equipment has unstable surfaces, so it's actually movable surfaces, so like a bridge or net. So when you step on it, it's imbalance. So what it does, it makes your muscles work in a coordinated approach to allow you to maintain your balance. So that's what's unique about this. And in terms of safety, There's handrail everywhere. So if, for instance, you compare falls prevention session that you do at a clinic, for instance, where you have to make sure that there is somewhere for the clients to hang on to or to hold on to, with the senior exercise park, it's quite safely designed. There's always a place that you can hang on to. And when the exercise program that we design is progressive, so we gradually increase the difficulty of the exercise, and gradually participants feel more confident and able to do a bit more challenging tasks and movement. So in terms of safety, the equipment is quite safe. It does not provide additional risk to any other rehab-related exercise that you do in a clinic. And because the movement is very intuitive, people can actually go and exercise themselves and not necessarily need to have a complicated understanding of what to do and how to do things.
Yeah, and how would you see? You said that those are quite good devices. What kind of things you would like to see more? What kind of things could be improved in this kind of exercise devices for the elderly people?
The outdoor exercise equipment, as it stands at the moment, is workable, so it's quite safe and easy to use. I think the way I would like to see things moving forward is to have both these equipment outdoor, more opportunities for all the people, and certainly with the program that we run, we initially provide the program that are supervised, so we have a qualified staff that actually train all the people on how to use it, so they feel more comfortable. So providing that supervision aspect for that demographic is actually quite important. Many old people would like to have someone there, to guide them, to help them, to talk to. So that aspect is something that we need to be mindful of if we are to design more outdoor equipment like that, because in normal circumstances, when you have equipment installed outdoors, it doesn't mean that people are going to straight away go and use it, especially if they haven't used it before, have not been physically active before. So certainly provide that engagement and facilitation process when you install something like that outdoor. It's actually quite important. And that could be working with local governments. That could be providing some supervised session where there is a qualified staff or someone who is a qualified professional that can go through the equipment, for instance. Other aspect that can help as well is instructions. So there's something that people are able to read and follow as well. So there are a few things that, now that you can expand that aspect of outdoor exercise equipment, make it more available for the wider community, and make it easily accessible, and make it user-friendly so everyone can go and have a go.
Mm. And from the practical point of view, how is it in Australia? You have quite a lot of heat, especially in the northern parts, and direct sunlight. Do you need to take those into account somehow, because elderly might be susceptible training in the heat?
That's right. So certainly there should be some risk management in place. So we, in our program, we quite mindful of the weather. We do encourage local governments to cover the excess equipment if possible. So there's some shedding from the sun. We do have a policy that in certain temperature we don't do exercise outside. We do cancel or reschedule them. We also are quite mindful of the time that we run the program. So during a very hot or peak temperature, it's probably it's good to avoid them. So you want to run the program early in the morning if possible, or later when there is when the temperature is a bit that have reduced a little bit. So there's few things that you can do to overcome those weather elements. But it is important, I think, when you put things in context. I mean, we can't change weather. So, we're going to have winter, it's going to be wet and cold, and summer it's going to be hot and sweaty. So it's managing it in a way that is workable and safe, but not avoiding doing physical activity. So all these, the weather can be some form of barrier, but it's possible to go around this. After all, I mean, we have to manage our health irrespective of the weather, if it's hot or cold. You still want to make
Mm.
sure that the same way that you brush your teeth in the morning. It doesn't matter if it's hot or cold, and you have your shower. So it's the same thing. It's just a matter of managing it well, so there are some safeguard in place, and you can move things around, but it's still a good attitude to go and say, oh, okay, hot, cold, yes, might be difficult, might need to move things a little bit, but it's all possible to still maintain our health irrespective of the weather elements.
Yeah, that makes all sense. In Finland, we don't really have the problem with the heat. It's just the amount of
That's right.
snow half of the year.
And
So
exactly. What do you do? I mean, you don't go outside at all, or you still go for a walk if you can. I mean, you guys dress up really well, so you're
yeah, it,
equipped
it
for
depends
that.
a little bit of part of Finland. Like Helsinki region is in the very south, so it doesn't often get that cold. Although it's by the sea, so it's more humid and it feels colder. But where I'm from middle of Finland. It's quite common to have like maybe 2-3 weeks. It's like -30 Celsius.
Oh my
So
God.
you can maybe go walk for a few few minutes, but it is quite cold. But I think in Finland the elderly is rates quite well. We have quite a lot of public swimming halls, and usually those have a gym, and they
Yeah.
have a reduced price or even free
Oh yeah,
for the
wonderful. Yeah.
elderly people. So it's actually quite nice when you go to those gyms. It's usually,
Yeah.
especially in the morning, it's elderly people and they seem to know each other. And then there's sauna and they are like
Yeah. So as long
seeming
as
to
there are
have a good time.
alternatives, yeah. As long as there are alternatives, so you don't say it's too cold, I'm not going to do anything for 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you see with the strength aspect with this outdoor equipment? Because I think usually they don't offer enough resistance even for the elderly people. And I think the like 1 RM is 1 RM for also older people, and it's beneficial to actually have quite a high resistance that you keep your neuromuscular system. So how do you see this aspect?
That's right. So there are ways to progress exercise. So you increase the load and you make sure that you provide that um, ongoing challenge to the muscle. We use, I mean, when clients get to the stage when they're actually quite active, we increase the progression of the exercise, but with the use of external or other weights, for instance, if it's ankle weights or wrist weights, that then gives the ongoing progression. Um, and there's other ways that we modify the exercise to make it more difficult. We can use step, for instance, which then makes them, with the sit to stand, for instance, go a little bit deeper. So there are ways that we can keep challenging them to make sure that they don't get into a plateau in that sense. So there are ways to make things a bit more difficult, which is why my trainers normally will be qualified staff that know what to do and make sure that it's adjustable for participants. Um, but also, it's important to be mindful, especially with older population, that they do have got various medical issues. So, we think for us, if we go to the gym, yes, we need perhaps to increase weight and things like that. But with older people, sometimes it's their body weight can be sufficient to keep them
Mm,
going and do some exercise that can still keep them independent around the house, um, if it makes sense.
mm. Yeah, it does make sense. And so in research settings, you said that you are able to change it. How about when people use them normally? Are there ways and guidelines how to make it a little bit more challenging, or how does it go in these situations?
So within the research aspect, the measure that we do to collect, for instance, the strengths to understand how well they're functioning to start with, we do use physical function measures that are quite relevant. So we're not doing 1RM or a bit more rigorous lab-based to actually measure it. We use a physical function measure. With the normal circumstances, so for instance, if people go in and exercise themselves, you do require a bit more supervision maybe, and a bit more understanding and a bit more education around that aspect so people know what they need to do. So all these equipment will need to be complemented ideally with some form of educating participants or clients what to do and how to progress it, to make sure that they're actually maintaining their health and progressing every time they use it. So that could be that needs to be obviously catered for, and there are ways to go around this. I mean, there could be possibly an option, or I've seen some other equipment that have some instructions in place on how to use it, but maybe there need to be a bit more information or usage of some technology to train and maybe to educate clients a bit more of what to do and how to do it. So that's something that needs to be looked at in more details. Definitely.
This podcast is sponsored by Fibion. Fibion is an accurate sitting and physical activity tracking device and analysis platform. It is a great tool for projects that aim for behavior change in sedentary behavior and incidental physical activity. Fibion provides easy-to-understand PDF and web browser reports for participants. Other features include comparisons to recommendations, linking results to health risks, achievement cards, and interactive goal-setting tool. In addition, Fibion provides an API that allows for easy integration to other systems and applications. Learn more about Fibion at fibion.com/research. Fibion, from researchers to researchers.
And how do you see now there's the pandemic going on and the possibility of infection? Can those outdoor equipment used safely at the moment?
So at the moment in Australia we have restrictions. We're not allowed to gather and not allowed to use any outdoor equipment or playground. That will be lifted soon. However, I think there are a couple of advantages using outdoor equipment rather than indoor equipment. One of them is being outdoors, so you always have circulation of fresh air, so you don't have concern of, if you're using air conditioning, of what's happening in terms of the air if someone is unwell. So that's one thing that's probably provide a bit more advantage over indoor. And with the cleaning, it's possible to clean. So if you use good hand hygienes and you make sure that you use hand sanitizer, if you clean the equipment or the handle with disinfectant, so it's all possible to manage. It's just nowadays it's a matter of actually putting those measures in place. So if it's in a public space, there's enough education for residents to be able to make sure that they maintain good hygiene, but also for local governments that provide those services to be able to come and clean those equipment regularly. So there are ways to get around this. So it's all possible and manageable if we are going to be in that, pandemic space for a few more months. There are ways that we can probably manage it well, that people can still utilize outdoor equipment and still maintain their physical health.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe it's a good time to learn this anyway, the seasonal flus, and it would be good for the governments also to take care of the hygiene in those situations. So maybe this is a good time to learn. How do you see in general the situation with elderly people and probably quite a long some sort of self-isolation for them? How do you see their physical and mental health situation?
So it's probably quite timely question. Those that are coming from a health professional background are quite concerned about the potential impact that this self-isolation and restrictions will have on older people's health. I mean, we're certainly concerned that there might be some deconditioning there, physical deconditioning, if people are not maintaining their health and physical function and moving a lot. So that's one aspect, but also the mental well-being is a bit concerned in terms of not just not being able to go outside, but also the social isolation, not being able to go outside and be in touch with other people. So that's something that it is quite difficult and concerning. So it's probably timely to think about ways that people can still exercise outside if possible, practicing physical distancing and not being closed in a confined environment or at home. And some older people might not have equipment like, younger people might have, weights, therapins and things like that. So having the opportunity to go outside for your local park and practice, physical distancing and whatever restrictions that they are in place to follow them, and then still be able to exercise. So I think if local government will put in place those cleaning good cleaning routine and practice, and provide those positive messaging for all the people that it's still possible to go and exercise, and as long as you keep safe distance, then we might be able to overcome that crisis, or reduce those risks that we anticipate might happen with that demographic. So very challenging time, very important to start thinking what the future is going to look like, and very important to be inclusive, not to think about the kids and adults, but also think about all the people and how that might impact on them and what we can do to actually support them in that period. So yeah, very, very difficult. I'm sure that many people that have you had the chance to speak to came up with some various suggestions and ideas as well.
Yeah. And do you think there could be some kind of time slot for the risk groups and elderly people that only they would be allowed to go do outdoor activities, so you could kind of isolate them a bit more, that it would be more safe for them? Or what kind of creative things you could come up with that the safety could be improved for them?
I think it is possible. That's one option that is possible, is to limit the time that people go out and limit the age group. I don't know if I favor that or not, because I think that it's good to have engagement with various age group, and not just to say, okay, you're with this age group, you're allowed to go outside in this and this time. If you're in this age group, you're allowed to go in this and this time. I mean, there's probably pros and cons. We suddenly saw in the last few weeks, for instance, that there were allocated time slots for people, healthcare worker and older people in the morning, to go to the shop, to the shops, and they get
Mm.
priority. That seems to work really, really well. And I think soon they're going to ease that restriction. With outdoor, I think it comes down to also your area. I mean, I live in a suburb and there's no issues with physical uh, um, distancing, so you can still go outside and be safe. You can move around
Mm.
and still be able to walk and do things. So I don't think we've seen that problem as yet. But maybe in the cities there might be some issue around that. But I have mixed feeling around those, allocated hours. I think they might. I don't know if they will be motivating, and they might actually be a bit more counterproductive, in the sense that once you classify people, you're allowed, you're not allowed, it has this negative context into it. But I
Mm.
mean, time will tell. Maybe time will tell.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. It is quite challenging to arrange things that you kind of make it safe, but not too much restricting the freedom of the people. I agree with you there. And how do you see, you have been doing studies with people with knee arthritis, knee replacement, and so on. Do you see something special with the situation with these people?
Yeah. So people with joint pain or joint condition, Sometimes the pain can be a barrier to actually go outside and exercise. That's not different to the current situation. It's just something that sometimes it's perceived as, dangerous. If there's pain, I don't want to move. So that's one aspect, but that um, we actually know from quite strong evidence that managing osteoarthritis exercise is one of the key aspects to manage it quite well, and it actually helped to reduce the symptoms of pain. So physical activity is definitely encouraged, irrespective if you have joint pain or not joint pain. Maybe nowadays people that have some form of comorbidities, if they're inside their houses and perhaps afraid to go and see the light health professionals, that might be um, something that to be mindful of. For instance, what I mean by that is, you don't want to, you can't see your physio or you can't see your exercise physiologist because it's not essential and because of the current restrictions. So that might be problematic. So I think here in Australia, for instance, they introduced the telehealth, so people can still consult with the health professionals using Zoom or other technology. So that is still possible. So they're still able to manage their condition irrespective of the current crisis. And I think it's really important that there is still sense that you can still manage it. Not everything is on hold because of the COVID-19, and still be able to be out there and exercise. So in that regard, education of clients in terms of pain, and that pain is expected sometimes, but you can manage it well, and exercise is very important for you. So you still need to keep your health and your physical health, and still need to do your exercise or your rehab exercise, and then also to allow them to still connect with their allied health professionals, so they've got that supervision, someone that is helping them to manage the condition.
Yeah, that makes sense. And earlier you also mentioned that you are doing some clinical trials. Could you tell more about what kind of trials you are doing?
So at the moment, we're finishing the current study with the exercise bar. We've had a big group. The definition of clinical trials, so we are both on the same page. In that instance, we are looking at health outcomes. So part of the trial we do is to see if they're training and if they're using the exercise bag, are they feeling better? Are they stronger? And so on. So that's the current project we're doing. Other projects that are more clinically oriented, we hope to start another randomized trial soon that help us to examine the exercise program with people with dementia. So we hope to expand what we do with a bit more older people that have cognitive impairment. So that's something that we hope to start soon once we have once we know a bit more what happens with access to aged care, and once the restrictions will be lifted. So that's something that is hopefully will happen in the near future.
Yeah, quite a challenging time for for the upcoming
Very challenging. Yeah, that's
research
right.
projects. So do you have any insights for how to move forward with the new project when you don't really know? Can you do the measurements? Are the funding bodies kind of giving you leeway that you can postpone the measurements, or what kind of things you have faced in this situation?
Yeah. So I think the fact that everyone is affected, so it's a global pandemic, it's actually quite helpful because we're all in it together. So funding body are understanding, aware of the situation. For us at the moment, because we haven't started that particular trial, we're putting it on hold with the hope that we just need to delay it and then can start it a bit later. If the pandemic lasts longer than, I don't know, than we expect, maybe longer than 6 months, then we might need to think again if we're able to carry that project, if there's anything else that we can do. Very problematic for studies that require hands-on. they're not lab-based, so we still need to have one-on-one with clients and with people, so that is difficult. And with this particular demographic, because they vulnerable population in aged care facility, we need to make sure that they are protected, that we don't put them at risk. So I don't have an answer. It's a matter of just we have to wait and see how things are evolving. Hopefully, we are able to contain it. Hopefully, restrictions will be lifted, and hopefully, we can start it maybe later in the year. So a lot of it is just unknown at this stage, and just
It
if
is.
and if and if and if.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with you.
This podcast is sponsored by Fibion.
My name is Dr. Paul Batman, and I'd like to just say a few words about Fibion. I've used it a number of times on different projects that I've been involved in and find that it's incredibly reliable, very valid, and incredibly sturdy. I love the graphics that come with it. It really is very clear and can easily see the active in and active periods as well. So I'd certainly recommend Fibion to anyone that's interested in finding out more about sedentary behaviour, particularly the concept of sitting and how we can possibly break it up with some really good, valid information.
So we have now discussed about the elderly training possibilities and of the implication of the pandemic. Is there something you would like to add to these topics, or is there some other topics you would like to bring into discussion?
I think we've covered quite a lot. I think in the time that we discussed, would be quite interesting to see what the future holds and how that's going to, change the face of research. A lot of it is unknown. A lot of it is, you wait and see, and hopefully things will get to some degree of normality. There's uncertainty around what normal is and how normal is going to look like. I think from research perspective, all researchers are quite concerned and uncertain about what's going to happen or not. We have had interruption with our study because of the COVID-19. We had to quickly, change things and just accept that we might have lost some data. So, and in terms of how I see exercise and exercise in the future, I will be very keen to obviously continue what we do in terms of outdoors and green and open space, and how we able to modify and be mindful of the design, that we focusing on age-friendly aspect. That is, there's no issue with inequity, that everyone can go outside and exercise, everyone is safe, everyone is able to have a go. And hopefully we will keep working together in a collaborative way, in a partnership, and that's probably the best way to go forward.
I see. And so you are doing important and relevant work with the elderly people. Are you looking for some kind of collaborators, whether in academia or industry? If you have any wishes for collaborators, please you can tell here.
For us, we're always looking aged care organizations and local governments to be working with us, because a lot of the project we do with them. So we like to employ co-design aspect. So that's actually quite important. And globally, I mean, we've had a few correspondence with international experts as well, to see how we can work together. So from my point of view, collaboration and partnership is probably key to success. We're also looking at some technology, or how we can make the equipment user friendly, how we can use technology to allow people to be able to use it and have instruction and have video and things like that. So there are a few things that we are looking at in terms of expanding our work. So we're happy to work with people that are happy to work with us. We have to partner, because I believe that if we're working together, we're probably stronger. and we're always looking for funders. But I'm sure that that's probably every researcher will tell you we would love to get more fundings to do more research. So that's not new, but we're definitely looking for, support from philanthropic bodies or other government to help us to do more public health research.
And even though you said that all researchers are looking for more funding, but I think in your case it could be because outdoor exercise is probably important, really important in next couple of years, or more important than normally. So you might be in a good position to get more funding. Is there anything you would like to promote here?
Not really. Not something in particular. I would love to acknowledge the company that has been working with us, the exercise equipment company. They've been crucial in our work, and we have no conflict of interest. So they've been wonderful in allowing us to do our research without any bias, and have been quite wonderful in allowing us to provide input on their design and to make it age friendly. So labset is the company in Australia. It's Lark Industries, which is formerly known as labset Australia, and our equipment, wonderful equipment, coming from Finland. So we are quite grateful for our partnership with them.
Yeah, that's good to hear that the collaboration with the industry is going nicely, and no conflicts of interest. Nice to hear that. So I think we are closing our time limit. So what would be your final remarks for this very, very interesting episode?
First of all, I want to say thank you, Oli, for facilitating this and allowing me to, have my 2 cents and share a bit of our experience. For me, the take-home message is we need to find ways to work together and to get all the people more physically active, and use our expertise and experience and work with them. So work with the community and to provide those translation research and work in collaboration with local governments, so we're actually able to make an impact on the built environment. So it's, we will live in age-friendly environment that everyone will have the opportunity to safely, go outside and exercise.
Yeah, that was a good remarks for the end. It was an honor to have you in the podcast, Pazit. I had brilliant time talking with you, so I really appreciate you taking the time for this podcast. So thank you.
Thanks, Oli.
Thanks for joining us this week on Physical Activity Researcher Podcast. If you like the show, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing or following the show on Twitter. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. If you found value in the show, we would really appreciate a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever app you're using. Or if you would, in a real old school way, simply tell a friend about the show. It would be a great help for us. We have a fantastic lineup of guests for forthcoming episodes, so be sure to tune in. Thank you all for your support and have a great day.
This podcast is sponsored by Fibion. Get scientific validation and learn more about Fibion at fibion.com/research. The Physical Activity Researcher podcast has created an activity tracker purchase guide for researchers. Get your free copy from the link in the podcast description.
Thank you for listening to the Physical Activity Researcher Podcast.